The story happens in Gotham City, 1981. Arthur Joaquin Phoenix, fills in as a comedian for an organization called Haas. He battles with serious discouragement by and by, yet discovers some type of hopefulness in performing for other people and attempting to make individuals giggle. He is entrusted with promoting a store by moving and waving a sign around. On one such event, the sign gets grabbed by a gathering of troublemaker teenagers, constraining Arthur to pursue them into a back street. They crush the sign against his face and continue to kick him while he's down barbarously. In this period, Gotham is battling with wrongdoing, joblessness, and neediness. Arthur visits a social laborer for his prescription, as well as his continuous emotional well-being issues. On the transport ride home, a little youngster checks Arthur out. He causes senseless faces to entertain the kid, however his mom advises Arthur to let him be. Arthur starts to snicker insanely and wildly. At the point when the mother questions him, he gives her a card that makes sense of that he has a state of mind that makes him chuckle the way that he does. Arthur gets back to a skyscraper condo project, where he resides with his debilitated mother, Penny, Frances Conroy. After supper, they sit and watch a television syndicated program with Murray Franklin, Robert De Niro. Arthur envisions himself being on the show and standing out enough to be noticed. In his dream, Arthur charms the crowd and Murray by letting them know that he deals with his mom. Murray connects with Arthur and welcomes him up in front of an audience before everybody, where they share a familial hug. It is uncovered that Penny used to work for Thomas Wayne, Brett Cullen, and is fixated on the mogul and has been presently keeping in touch with him to attempt to better their day-to-day environment. At Haas, Arthur is given a firearm for insurance by his collaborator Randall, Glenn Fleshler, after he catches wind of the robbing occurrence. Arthur is both hesitant and eager to get such a gift as guns are banned working, yet before long finds his certainty becoming subsequent to getting the weapon. Nonetheless, not long after this, he is defied by his cold and cruel chief, who criticizes him for losing the sign and removes the expense of it from his compensation. Arthur answers exclusively by grinning bitterly. Arthur meets and becomes captivated by one of his neighbors, a single parent named Sophie Demond, Zazie Beetz. She addresses him courteously about relating issues that he can connect with. In any case, while attempting to establish a connection with her, he seems off-kilter and strange around her. At a certain point, he goes through his day following her. Afterward, she stops by his condo and inquires as to whether he was following her, and he concedes that he was, however she doesn't appear to be not entirely okay by it. He welcomes her to a stand-up satire show that he is performing at. She is reluctant, however is prevailed upon by his appeal and comical inclination. Arthur watches humorists perform to assist him with acquiring some understanding into the specialty, yet feels more abnormal and awkward as his beyond absurd chuckling isn't authentic. Arthur goes to the Satire Club for his exhibition. His apprehension consumes him and, as a survival strategy, inadvertently winds up chuckling so hard that he can scarcely talk. He then, at that point, starts heading out into his daily schedule, which is actually a major buzzkill. Sophie has all the earmarks of being in the crowd, the main individual who is giggling at Arthur's jokes. This gives him the solace he really wants to keep on kidding in spite of his inward torture and disturbance. Arthur later goes to a youngster's emergency clinic to engage them as a comedian. He carried his weapon with him, and it drops out on the floor. Arthur's supervisor later reprimanded him for this. Arthur argues briefly possibility, yet his manager declines and flames him on the spot. To finish things off, Randall blames everything on Arthur by guaranteeing that Arthur got the firearm himself. On the tram train ride home from Haas in full jokester getup, Arthur spots 3 alcoholic youthful money road types working for Wayne Undertakings bugging a lady. Arthur begins snickering accidentally and draws the consideration of the men, while the lady astutely escapes from that vehicle. The men approach Arthur and fake him and his giggling before they begin to beat him. Arthur retaliates justifiably, however they group up, and tenaciously beat him to the floor. Having had enough, Arthur then takes out his weapon and shoots 2 of them dead justifiably prior to following the last person out of the train and killing him on the steps. In shock over what he recently did, Arthur withdraws into a closed-by-open men's room. After a snapshot of hysterical thought, he finds a power ascending inside him, and he starts to move without help from anyone else. Right now, he considers himself in the filthy mirror to be a battered and spread but strong jokester and starts to embrace it. He conceals the firearm and afterward gets back to the apartment complex where he meets and kisses Sophie for the principal time. The fresh insight about the 3 homicides spreads, with some considering it to be an assault on the affluent, while others support the demonstration. Thomas Wayne stands up and censures it, naming the lower class as jokesters, which turns into an image they promptly embrace. The following day, Arthur wipes out his storage at Haas, yet not prior to defying Randall about double-crossing him and breaking the time-punching machine. He then, at that point, leaves, feeling cheerful and free. News reports show jokester agitators fighting through the city and unleashing inconvenience, denouncing the higher special. Arthur sees that he has unintentionally made this and starts to see his actual potential, which makes him truly enchanted. Arthur later finds one of Penny's letters to Thomas, which shows that Arthur is Thomas's child. Arthur goes to Wayne Estate, where he meets youthful Bruce Wayne, Dante Pereira Olson. Subsequent to playing out an enchanted stunt for Bruce, he sticks his hands through the entryway and powers Bruce to grin, acknowledging profound insight that they could conceivably be siblings. Nonetheless, Alfred, Douglas Hodge, comes to intercede and advise Arthur to leave. Arthur specifies his mom and her inclusion with Thomas. Alfred says he recalls Penny, yet that she was deceiving him. Arthur assaults and almost chokes Alfred through the bars, however at that point sees that Bruce is watching. Arthur then, at that point, gets hold of himself and escapes the Wayne premises. That night, Arthur tracks down Thomas at a public workmanship theater occasion. Arthur invades the theater by imitating an attendant. He follows Thomas Wayne into a men's room and attempts to stand up to him with the capability of him being his dad. Arthur makes reference to Penny, whom Thomas likewise recalls. While Thomas likewise recognizes that Penny used to work for him as a component of his housekeeping staff, he says that she was hallucinating and that it's basically impossible that Arthur could be his child. Thomas additionally makes sense of that Penny never let Arthur know that he was taken on, which Arthur firmly dismisses before wildly snickering in front of Thomas. Thomas, ignorant about Arthur's condition, becomes guarded and hits Arthur upside the head prior to having him tossed out of the structure. Arthur gets back, where he torments himself by pummeling his head on the fridge in an attack of gloom and yearning. The following day, 2 police analysts, Burke, Shea Wigham, and Garrity, Bill Camp, go to Arthur's condo to address him on the tram murders because of the word that the suspect was wearing comedian makeup, and they realize Arthur lost his employment before that day. Arthur denies any association and gets the investigators to leave. Not long later, Penny becomes sick and is hospitalized. Sophie sits by Arthur as he keeps an eye on his mom. In the emergency clinic, Arthur sees that Murray's program is playing a class from his stand-up daily schedule, yet he is harmed to see that Murray just played it to ridicule Arthur. Arthur later gets a call from a rep for Murray's show. He is welcome to show up as a visitor, which Arthur hesitantly acknowledges. In the wake of concentrating on different meetings on the satire show, Arthur chooses to end it all before the live crowd, figuring it will make them chuckle. Looking for hard verification, Arthur goes to Arkham Haven and addresses a representative, named Carl Brian Tyree Henry, who has a record on Penny. At the point when Carl says he can't give Arthur the data he needs, Arthur grabs the record and races to understand it. When away and secret in a flight of stairs, Arthur opens the records and understands them, observing that Thomas was coming clean, as per the reports. Actually, Penny embraced Arthur after he was tracked down deserted as a child, and she manhandled him, binds him to a radiator and beating him close by her oppressive bow. One piece of the record specifies Arthur having a head injury, which is no doubt what caused his giggling condition. Arthur gets back to the medical clinic and lets Penny know that he thought his life was a misfortune, yet he sees it's a fucking satire. With that, he covers Penny to death. Arthur returns home and breaks into Sophie's condo. She sees him and is panicked, requesting that he leave for her girl. Arthur inquires as to whether she has at any point had a genuinely horrendous day, to which she answers that she doesn't have any acquaintance with him. Through this, it is uncovered that each and every other second highlighting Sophie was simply in Arthur's mind. A messed up and baffled Arthur apologizes for his interruption and lets Sophie be, stomping out of her loft. Arthur begins to prepare for his appearance on Murray's show and paints his face white. He is visited in his loft by Randall and another previous colleague, a smaller person named Gary Lee Gill. They give sympathies after they catch wind of Penny's passing. However, at that point Randall starts referencing Burke and Garrity going to their lofts to examine them concerning the tram murders. Arthur understands that Randall is just looking for a method for involving Arthur to cover his own butt and afterward snaps, mercilessly wounding Randall 2 times in the face prior to crushing his head against the wall. A scared Gary questions Arthur's deeds and asks to be given up. Arthur consents to before energetically startling him as a trick. Gary attempts to fix the lock on Arthur's entryway, however can't because of his level. He requests that Arthur open the entryway for him, to which Arthur promptly concurs, stopping once to say thanks to Gary for being the main individual in his life who was pleasant to him. Arthur kisses Gary on the brow and lets him go. Arthur then colors his hair green, puts on full jokester makeup, and wears a burgundy suit. He then moves down the flights of stairs, completely embracing his craziness and light-hearted life. Burke and Garrity find Arthur moving in the road and move in to capture him. Arthur runs, and they pursue him into the metro train where many other Gotham residents are dressed like comedians subsequent to being motivated by the killings. Arthur conceals his face with a jokester veil, which he takes from a dissenter, and coincidentally begins a fight in the train vehicles. As the analysts seek after Arthur, one comedian disrupts everything, and Burke coincidentally shoots him dead when they battle with his firearm. The comedians haul the criminal investigators out of the tram and begin beating them tenaciously, permitting Arthur to move away, moving flawlessly through the police powers which swarm the region. At the television slot, Arthur meets Murray in his representative quality, Mark Maron. Before he goes on, Arthur requests that Murray present him as Joker, since Murray alluded to him as such while playing his clasp. Murray inquires as to whether his jokester makeup has political plans behind it, to which Arthur answers, "I don't put stock in that. I don't have faith in anything." While at the same time ready to be presented, Arthur sees Murray broadcasting a clasp of a striving Arthur attempting to make a quip. This makes Arthur's brain and plans change, and afterward he moves out into the spotlight. Arthur goes out as the show starts. He clumsily makes Murray a wisecrack, which he tracks down, interesting for its potentially offensive sense of humor, however no other individual does. Subsequent to being defied with this, Arthur go on by confessing to the Metro murders. Murray and the crowd gradually understand that Arthur is significant. Arthur contends that the crowd just focuses on the casualties since Thomas Wayne represented them, however any other person like Arthur would be disregarded and strolled over. Murray and the crowd become angrier with Arthur, however he does as well. Murray reproves Arthur, which grows into Arthur snapping and making another quip, smiling energetically. "What do you get when you cross a deranged maverick with a general public that leaves him and deals with him like junk?" he asks, just for Murray to have a go at stopping him prior to requiring the police. An irritated Arthur then shouts, "You get what you fucking merit," prior to blowing Murray's head off before everybody. The crowd takes off in fear, and the insight about the homicide quickly raises a ruckus around town. Arthur then, at that point, chuckles truly without precedent for his life. Gotham is presently invaded by revolting residents dressed as comedians in the wake of catching wind of what Arthur did. The Waynes pass on a cinema to track down the disorder in the roads. Thomas takes his better half Martha, Carrie Louise Pietrello, and Bruce into a rear entryway, however one jokester follows them and tells Thomas he is getting what he merits utilizing the zinger that Arthur utilized on the Murray Franklin show. With that, he shoots Thomas and Martha dead before Bruce. In the meantime, Arthur has been captured and is being taken by the police. Arthur peers through the window and snickers joyously as he sees the obliteration and turmoil he has caused. All of a sudden, the comedians in an emergency vehicle run into the vehicle, killing the police and liberating Arthur, who is harmed and oblivious. At the point when he rises, Arthur ends up encompassed by a horde of cheering mobsters in comedian covers. The agitators then cheer Arthur on as he remains on a vehicle and embraces their deference, since he has gained the appreciation he has long wanted. He moves to their cheering and afterward stops, observing that his nose is draining bountifully. He then, at that point, spreads the blood across his upper lip and smiles prior to remaining before them, raised like a divine being. In a little while, Arthur is secured in Arkham Refuge. He snickers in the wake of recounting this story and imagines a youthful Bruce remaining over his folks in the backstreet. Understanding that he has, as it were, transformed Bruce into himself, Arthur chuckles some more, finding this really entertaining. He meets another social specialist, April Effortlessness, and says he needs to make her a quip, yet she wouldn't get it. A couple of moments later, Arthur then, at that point, gets out of the room, abandoning a path of horrendous impressions before he is pursued around by orderlies.